So, hello everyone, and welcome to our second day of Flutter Conference India. And yesterday was a great day. We had very special speakers, and they shared very nice content and their knowledge. So, and I can see you have poured over your heart on Twitter, and thank you for that. And today also we have a lineup of 3 sessions, and I know you'll enjoy it because they are great and they are experts. So let's learn from them.
Yeah, so yesterday actually was we have like a very amazing speakers lineup, and we get like the very interesting talks over there. So I think, and also we just saw the Twitter today, it was like probably booming up and down, up and down. I just saw a lot of comments yesterday. So guys, thank you so much for support and love again. So I think Yash will introduce our next speaker.
Okay. So guys, before introduction of a next speaker, I would like to ask you guys that we are all Flutter developers, we all make apps, but the app is only for one language. We can't make it for different types of people. Different type of people speak different language, learn from different languages. So we need to understand them. We need to understand the client's requirements. So for that topic, actually, we have our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to talk on the different language section, the internationalization of our topic. He's none other than Dominik. So I would like to welcome Mr. Dominik Roszkowski on the dais.
Hi.
Hi, Dominik. So I would
Nice
like
to be here.
Nice to meet you. So I would like to give a short introduction about Dominik. So Dominik is actually a Flutter co-organizer at Flutter Warsaw. He's also the brains behind the community application of Flutter Europe. He's also made a student satellite project, which is still in the orbit working right now. And he's none other than a ramen lover, Mr. Dominik. So I would like to give the dais to Mr. Dominik and continue with the topic. Yeah?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for this kind announcement. I'm so happy to be here. And I hope that you will have fun during today's presentations. The lineup is great, so I'm also happy to watch them later. So today we're going to talk about internationalization. So we will talk about how to do it properly and how you can make it easier than it is like described in documentation. But let me just introduce myself. So I'm Dominik, and I'm Flutter freelancer. I've been working in Flutter since 2018, so over 2 years now. Before that, I was working with Xamarin and .NET on the backend. I am co-founder of Flutter Warsaw and Flutter Europe Conference. So if you want to learn more, Flutter Warsaw has great webinars every month right now during the lockdown. So I kindly invite you to join this community. And I also write sometimes on my blog, roszkowski.dev, and you can also follow me on Twitter. Sometimes I post some new like code pens, Flutter creations, and so on. So if you want to be informed and see some Flutter designs, so I kindly invite you to follow me on Twitter. You can just type Dominik Roszkowski and you should find me easily. Okay, great. So let's firstly ask ourselves a question, like what is the actual internationalization? And maybe you've heard of a term called localization, translation, accessibility, and so on. There are many terms in UX, UI design and mobile design that actually cover similar topics. So let us like define what are we going to talk actually about. So there are 2 main topics, and they have these abbreviations: localization and internationalization, L10N and I18N. So the number between L and N and the number between I and N means that there are 10 or 18 letters in between. So the first term, localization, is more about tweaking your app for a specific market. So for instance, the app should behave or look differently, for instance, in Poland, in India, in Japan, and in many different cultures. But internationalization is just making your app universal. So no matter where the app is being used, like no matter the country, the app should behave more or less universally. So For instance, what can you do to make your app, like localize your app? So for instance, you can give a user ability to use their currency, time zone, measurement system, metric, imperial, and so on. Sometimes you need to modify the layout of or make some changes in the navigation patterns in your app to make it more specific for a given market. So for instance, people in United States might be acquainted or used to some different navigation layouts than, for instance, in Eastern countries. Also, the content should be targeted for a country. So for instance, you should, if you have some products in your app or maybe podcasts, you should target there for a given country, like Polish podcasts in Poland, Indian in India. When it comes to I-18N internationalization, usually it's much more simple to do. So for instance, in general, it's enough to have some kind of translation in the app, so maybe different translation for several languages. The app itself maybe should be a bit language independent. So for instance, if you add new language, then you shouldn't do anything more to change the app. Like you shouldn't have to tweak the layout when you add new language. So you have to take into account, for instance, that some words may be longer or shorter in a given language. So for instance, let's say word back on a button may sometimes be much longer than in English 4 letters. So you have to take that into account, and your app should respond to these changes. And the same as in case of localization, you should give your user support for different locales, time zones, currencies. And again, the app should not should not care whether it's dollar, whether it's euro, or any other currency. It should just work. It should be universal. And today, I'm going to talk more about this internationalization part. Like, we're not going to talk much about how to change your app to adapt it for a given country, how to make it more accessible, for instance, for some very extraordinary countries. Today, we're going to talk how to add translations in a most convenient way that I could find during my career. So, but before that, I'm going to talk a bit how to do it like in an official way that's stated in the Flutter documentation. So, when you go to the Flutter documentation, which is absolutely great, like it's one of the best guides in Flutter documentation, how to make your app localizable, international. So you will know, you will find out that by default, Flutter supports only English. So if you start your new app in Flutter, you have only support for English language. And this is, for instance, provided by some classes, some widgets. So for instance, there is a widget called default material localizations that gives some English translations for some common terms in the app, like for instance, back button, cancel button, and so on. But very easily, you can add support for 77 more languages aside from English. And to do it, you just need to add one package called Flutter Localizations. This package has some great support for all these basic things that you can meet in your application. Like for instance, when you select a text and there's this pop-up shown, this toolbar, it will have a different language depending on the user locale if you add this Flutter localization package. Without that, it will always be in English. So I really recommend to check it out. So, but let me show you some example how to do it. So in the screen, you can see a very, very simple material app. So we all know it very well. This is an entry widget if you're on your application. So in order to add some very basic support for multiple languages, you have to add these 3 things. These are localizations delegates, which are classes that provide some support for handling the current locale and provide some translation terms. So Flutter comes with 3 basic delegates. Actually, this package comes with them. So the first one is global material localizations, which is a class that provides translation for material widgets. Then there's global widgets localization, which has some kind of common terms independent from the material library. And also, if you use, for instance, your app on iOS, you need to provide Cupertino localizations. And for instance, they will be used whenever you select text on the iOS device. Yes, so you need to provide this. Then in Material app has another important property, which is which tells the app what kind of locales we want to support. So you can add all of them, but you can also select some of them. So for instance, in this case, you can see there is only English, Polish, and Chinese. Yeah? So of course, you can add as many as you want. And if material localizations in Flutter localization is supported, you should be good to go. There is a way to add some custom localizations. So for instance, some time ago, Polish was not supported on iOS. So I had to create a custom localization delegate for Cupertino widgets in Polish. The only thing to do is just to translate some terms on your own. So here we have a sample app that actually uses only this very basic Flutter localization package, like nothing else. So for instance, right now, this is set up to be Polish. So this is actually an app running in Flutter. This is using device preview package that allows us to preview app and change its localization. So right now, you can see this on bottom left that this is set to be Polish. You can see also that there is a current locale set to Polish. I also added some basic check for the weekdays. So Flutter, depending on the locale, will, for instance, use different index for a first day of the week. Here you can see a label used for back button. Here you can see a label used for close button. On the top, you can see two widgets. I will tell more about them in a minute, but you can see that one of them is using alignment top left, and the second one is using alignment directional top start. And here is some long text to show how text behaves in different locales, depending on if it's longer than just one line. So this app supports English, Polish, German, Hindu, Arabic, and Chinese. Like I provided this material localizations. So let me just change this to maybe English. So this package allows me to do it very easily. So I changed to English. And as you can see, some things changed. So first weekday is now 0, which is Sunday. Current locale was set to English. And some the button labels changed to back and close. Nothing else changed. So let us maybe change this to German. As you can see, something's changed. So we have different buttons. The first day in German is different than in English. It's Monday. And we can see here, nothing else changed. So now let's maybe change this to Hindu. And there we will see some first changes. So as you can see, much more things changed. So for instance, the font size changed. So by default, in Hindu, the font size is a bit bigger. Of course, the buttons labels changed the first day. But like Hindu and English are usually similar because, for instance, they are both left to right. What happens if we change it to some language that is not left to right, like English or Hindu or Polish? So let us change this to Arabic. And as you can see, here we can see much more significant changes. Like, for instance, the longer text changed its directionality. Now it's right to left. The buttons also changed. So it's like inverse, like back is on the right now and the close is also on the right. Yeah. The first weekday is completely different. Like it's Saturday, I believe. Locale is Arabic, but the very important thing changed here on the top. So here in this column, I used two alignment widgets. One of them was using this alignment top left. And as you can see, it didn't change. But if I used alignment directional widget, then this widget now is aligned correctly to the directionality of a given locale. So as you can see, Flutter takes care of many things that you usually even wouldn't think about. So whenever you want to like make some widgets aware of directionality, let's say maybe this is a user avatar, or this is some button. So for instance, in some countries, like positive buttons are on the left, in other countries they are on the right. So if you want to take this into account, you should use alignment directional instead of typical alignment. There are many more widgets that take this into account. I recommend to check this widget, this property in Flutter documentation. But for instance, this one takes this into account. Also, the up bar changes automatically depending on the directionality, and so on and so on. So let us change back maybe to English again. One important thing is that if the user has a locale that is not supported by your application, so let's say, let me change this to maybe Bosnian. Yeah, so even though I changed this to Afrikaans or not Arabic, but Belarusian, Bengali, Bosnian, Bernese, so the app fallbacks to English because it doesn't know how to handle Bosnian. It doesn't know how to handle Belarusian. It just know how to handle English and some other languages. So it will always fall back to a default English locale. So let me switch back to English. So this was done purely with the basic Flutter localization without any additional work from my side. So this is done only by Flutter. Sometimes, if you have some parts of the app that, for instance, shouldn't take the current locale into account. So, for instance, maybe you have some kind of text that you will always want to behave like in English, or, for instance, in this case, like in Polish. You can do it very easily. So Flutter provides these localizations that override widget, that you can wrap some part of your application and provide some, let's say, custom locale like Polish. Or, for instance, you can imagine a situation where you have this like in a property of your state, and you just change these depending on the user selection. So there could be some buttons like change to Polish, change to English, change to Hindu, or whatever. Yeah, and this way you can provide some custom locale that's independent from the device. So you can see the device is in English locale, but this widget subtree, only this one, is using Polish locale. So this is pretty handy. And sometimes, for instance, let's say you have a device with English locale and you want to test your app in another language. So you can just wrap your app with override and see how the app looks in a different locale. Okay, but sometimes we want to provide some custom translations. Yeah, like we don't want to just use the material localizations like back, cancel, okay, like this is not enough. So we want to have some custom translations. Some our labels in the app should be translated also to this locale. So here with help comes something called localization delegate, and I'm going to show you how to actually use it, how to use it like manually in the most simple way. But later I will also show you how to use it in a more convenient way. So as you saw in the previous slides, I was using this global material localization delegate, Cupertino delegate, and so on. And in order to provide your own translations, you have to create your own localization. So here is a sample taken from the Flutter documentation. So you can also take a look at the documentation of Flutter and follow it in your own pace. But here you can see a simple class called demo localizations that is constructed with a given locale. And this is very simple, like very basic implementation that just stores some localized values here in a map: English, Hello World, Spanish, Hola Mundo. And you can add as many languages as you want. But as you can see, like if you have like hundreds of terms or maybe tens of languages supported, this is not really helpful. Like, this scales pretty badly. Whenever you add some new term, you have to add this to this map. Sometimes you can, for instance, use some separate file, like it could be JSON file, and you can just create some helper method to retrieve a translation from this file. It could be XML, it could be some other format that you want to use. And you have to provide this manually. You have to provide this term. So for instance, if you want to retrieve title, you just access this map with a language code and with a appropriate key. Yes, so title. This is pretty basic, like very manual. But in order to do that, you have to provide also demo localizations delegate. So the name demo is up to you. So this should extend localizations delegate, which is this class in Flutter that provides a way to handle locales. You have to override 3 methods here. So the first one is supported, then load, and then should reload. So usually, if you have only like one language, you can provide here false. But if you like to reload your locale, you have to add some condition for that. So for instance, if user changed its locale, you should reload the files. Here we're using just because this should return future, but we don't want to load anything from the disk or from the internet. So we just return synchronous future, and we just return this class that we showed before, demo localization. And we show that only English and Spanish are supported here. And this is pretty easy to use. So for instance, then you have your app, material app. You just provide this demo localizations delegate in your material app localizations, and you just tell the Flutter that you support English and Spanish. Yeah, and then just in your application, you just call, for instance, demo localizations of context, the title, yeah, to retrieve a given term. So this is like the most basic way to provide translations, but I really don't recommend to try it out. If you create some very sample app, very basic app, then that's way to go. But otherwise, you should use something more scalable. So let's make it more automated. So meet Intl package, which is like a very, very complex and useful and very well-documented package that provides some support for message translation, for genders, plurals, date and number formatting, currency, and so on. So the documentation is pretty long, but let's just focus today on the most basic thing, which is message translating. We won't focus today on, for instance, number formatting, but if you want to, for instance, let me just briefly mention it. So if you want, for instance, to format the number according to a given locale, like the decimal separators are different depending on a country, you should use the Intl package because it will do it automatically, almost automatically on its own. So let's dive into the Intl package. So the procedure to create the translations with Intl package is pretty short, but you have to be aware of some caveats. So first, you have to create a custom localization delegate, and I'm going to show you some source code, some sample delegate in a minute. Then you have to create so-called ARB files with Intl tool. So you create a class in Dart, then you run a program on this class, and this program generates ARB files. And ARB files, so let's stop for a second right now. ARB files is a format of files that is used in Flutter to store translations. This is file format designed by Google. A few months or maybe years ago, it was supported very well by a tool called Google Translator Toolkit. Right now, this tool is not available, but Flutter still uses ARB. There is some discussion on replacing this in future, but right now ARB are like natively supported files in Flutter for translations. Actually, these are just JSONs, and I'm going to show you some examples in a minute how these ARB files look like, so you can see them, like edit them on your own without any additional tools. Then, if you generate these ARB files, you need to send them or like translate them on your own or whatever. Like, just assume that you send them to translators, and translators need to import them to some tool, translate, and then they will send you back files for specific languages. So you just, for instance, develop your app in English, generate these files, then the translators can edit them or whatever, like use some tool to edit them and send you back the translated version. Of course, it can be you also. And then if you get this ARB files back, you will regenerate Dart code from these new ARB files. So in order to do that, you need to, of course, you need to add the intl translation package to Flutter, then run one command. So you provide the directory and the class that stores this custom localization delegate. I'm going to show you in a second how it looks like in VS Code. And then you regenerate these files, ARB files from Dart. So let me show you in code. So this is actually this very presentation, but I'm using it also for some sample with translation. So here we have a directory that stores this L10N demo translations. So the first thing that I've done was to create this this custom localization delegate. So here I have my demo localizations class, similar to the one that we saw a few minutes ago. It has one term called title. Then we have our demo localizations delegate. But see here, I'm using intl message function, and this way I'm using intl package, and the intl will retrieve a proper translation from a given file that was generated here. So here you can see I support English and Spanish, which are Dart files, and I have English and Spanish ARB files that I got from my translator, let's say. And here's my original ARB file that I created at the beginning. So in order to use it, I just provide this demo localization delegate here, and I can just call demo localizations of context title. But let us take a look at this ARB files. So the first one is the one that was generated with this first command. So I run this first command, pub run intl extract to ARB. So this was this first file, which was called intl messages. And this was generated from this this class, yeah? So it found this class. It found that I'm using intl message and sorry, and generated a term called title. So if we take a look here, we see that we have term called title, and it used the default value that I provided in the Dart class. There's also a class modified date and so on. Then I send this file, this very file, to some tool to translate it, and I retrieved English and Spanish. So here we can see English version, and it has key title, name Hello World, and in Spanish version, title is Hola Mundo. And after retrieving these ARB files, I run this second command, pub run intl translation, generate from ARB. So I generated message all, and here are some methods. Maybe let's take a look at the English version. So there is a class called message lookup and so on, but the most important thing is that it has some static static function that returns for a given key value for this key. Yeah, the same for Spanish, and it returns this. So the important thing here is that all this code is generated by the tool. You don't have to write it on your own. The only thing that you need to take care is to add new terms here. So we just add new term after each one. But as you can see, even though we are using some automation tools, it's still not so convenient. You have to do it on your own. You could use some other file type and make some adapters for INTL, but by default you should use ARB. And as you can see, this is not so convenient as it should be. Like, we shouldn't spend so much time on adding some translation terms in our app. So let's go back to the presentation. I will increase the font size in next examples. I saw the remark from the audience. Okay, so I showed the files. So is it really so convenient? In my opinion, it's not so convenient. I don't want to spend some time, so much time on this. Like, I really would like to spend my time on developing the app. So let's try something much more nice. So there are some extensions for Android Studio for VS Code, but one of the most favorite of mine is Flutter Intl, and this is supported for VS Code and Android Studio. So if you're using Android Studio, you should also be able to use this. I mostly use VS Code, so it's much more easy for me to show it here. So you just need to add this extension to VS Code. And in general, what it does, it takes this whole process that I showed you a few minutes ago, this command line tools, and it does it for you with some additional benefits. So I will show you some demo how I'm using this extension in a second. So this INTL extension, if you have this enabled, let me just increase everything. If you add this to your app, it will add some commands to VS Code. So there are 3 basic commands. The first one is initialize, the second one is remove locale, and the third one is add locale. So in this app, I just support, I think, English and German. When I enabled this was added to my peeps spec YAML. So it says that the Flutter Intl extension is enabled. And then after a couple of seconds, some files were generated for me. So let me show you them. So these 2 directories, generated and L10N, are directories generated by this extension. So what it did is that it created localization delegate for me. This is called S. So you can change this name to whatever you want, but by default, this is S. And it created this application delegate for me. And I just provided the ARB files. So I just added this English file, then German file. And that was all that I've done. And after that, this extension generated all these delegates for me. I didn't have to do anything more. So as you can see in German, we can see that there are some keys and values for them. And depending on the translation, there are different values. So as you can see, this is very similar to what we would have to do on our own, but this is very much automated. But of course, editing ARB files is not something that we would like to do manually. So what I recommend is to try some tool for that. So there are some tools on the market that have support for ARB files, not many. Like among 20 that I checked, only these 5 at least have very basic support. So Localizely is a very nice tool that I'm using in my projects. I'm not endorsed by them, but I really like their tool. It is paid one, so there's some free plan, but in general, you have to pay for that. Then there is POW Editor, which is like industry standard. It doesn't support ARB out of the box, but you can convert the JSON files that it produces to ARB. Then there are Crowdin, Loco, and Bubble Edit, which is a desktop editor. So these 5 should support at least partially ARB files. There used to be Google Translator Toolkit, but it's gone, so you cannot use it. There are also some other ways. So for instance, you can just use Google Spreadsheet to store your translations and then export them. Then again, you have to like export JSON and convert it to ARB, which doesn't work always. And you can check out this ARB converter tool from BMW. It doesn't cover every case. So for instance, ARB files have this nice property that you can provide different translation depending on the gender or depending on the count. So you can just provide, for instance, different value for 1 person and different for 2 persons, 2 people. So my tool of choice is Localizely, but I'm also using sometimes POW Editor and some other tools. So this is up to you. I recommend you to check out all of them and decide on your own. But today we're going to focus on this one. Because also this extension, as you maybe saw, was developed by this company. So this works pretty nicely. So here's my app. Again, this time this is using the Flutter Intl extension to generate translations. So let me just show you. This is very simple. Like I just changed my language from English to German. And let me just show you how it works under the hood. So let me find the file. Okay, so this is the file. And actually, this is the app, example app. And the only thing that I do here is that I provide this S delegate that was generated by the extension. So if you go and check out, this is my L10N file, and this is this S class that has this delegate. And I just provide a list of supported locales here. And then in my app, this is my example body. In my app, the only thing that I do is I just call S of context, intro welcome. Yeah. So if I go here, I will see that this intro welcome in English, this is here. But if I would change my language to German, then it will just return the German value. And if I want to change my language, I just call s.load, and I provide a given locale. So here I provide English, here I provide German. And I can access my current locale very simply by just calling intl get current locale. So take into account that I'm using the intl package here to check the current locale. So the my delegate doesn't provide me with this value. The only way to get this is to call intl get current locale. So this is very simple. So let me show you like my typical workflow if I want to translate some terms in the app and how convenient it can be. So I will use some translation tool. In my case, I will use Localizely. Then I will just download the ARB files. You can do it manually, but I'm using the bash script that just downloads them and extracts them to my directory. Then I need to keep be aware that whenever I add some new term like OK, back, or whatever, I just add them to my tool and refresh the terms. And if you want to skip this third-party tool, you can just edit your ARB files manually, and I'm going to show you how to do it very easily. So let me just switch to the Localizely. This is my sample project. I created a new account for that. And here are my translation terms. So maybe let us just change the one of the terms, not to add new one, but just change term. So let's change this to good afternoon. And now it was saved. Let me switch to the VS Code. So I have my custom task, which is called download translations from Localizely. Enter. Here it was translated. I can take a look into my English file. You can see this is blue, so it means that it was changed. And here you can see this is now good afternoon. This tool has some bugs, so I need to save this file again. And let me hot restart the app. And go to this page. But as you can see here, it was immediately changed to good afternoon. And it took me like 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. In typical workflow, I would just do it in a few seconds, and I would have my new translations ready in my app. And whenever I add some English term, then all the other users will know that, for instance, they have to translate it to German, like the client or the customer or whoever is translating the app. And of course, it stays the same in German. So this is my typical workflow. When I want to translate something, if I want to add something, I will just go to my tool of choice and just add new term and so on. But if you don't want to use a paid tool, or Localizely has some plans for open source, but still, you have to, if you are using some closed source work, you have to pay for that. But there is one very useful feature in Localizely, is that you can create your translations from strings. So I will just select this. I will press Command dot or Control dot, and I can run the code action called extract to ARB. So let me just call it app title. And if I go here, I will see that this was added. And it was also added to the ARB files. So the only thing that I need to do here is, for instance, just add the translation. And I think I need to restart. Yes, here you can see it was already translated in a few seconds. So I really recommend to try it out. So if you want to see the full manual, this is on my website, roszkowski.dev, and you will see that there is one article about internationalization. So there's a video and a written manual how to do it. So again, you can use whatever tool you want. If you will use different, then you will have to make some changes to the scripts. The script that I'm using here to download is also in the blog post. So this is the script. The VS Code task is also available there. So if you want, you can just go to the website and see for yourself. One important remark: if you're developing the app for iOS, you need to also provide provide what translations your app support in the Xcode. So here is the section in Xcode that you need to add new translations. Also, in iOS, you have to, for instance, provide translations for permission strings. You can provide some other translations. The same works for Android. In Android, you have to check the documentation, but usually you just use the strings.xml files if you want to translate something outside the Flutter app, but this is not the topic of this talk. So I think that my time is running out, so let's just wrap up the presentation. So in summary, everything related to translations in Flutter is related based on the localizations delegates. They can be different, you can create your own implementation that uses, for instance, some JSON files, XML, or whatever. It can translate on the fly. It's up to you, but in my opinion, the best way is just to have some statically generated files from some tool, not on your own, because if you try to edit them manually, you will probably make some mistakes while editing the JSON. There are some many ways, like I showed you at the beginning. This is very basic, that you just store some Dart class. You can use the localization delegate via the Intl package. You can use some automated code generation like Flutter Intl. There are other tools like VS Code Flutter I18N JSON. So if you go to the VS Code extensions page, you can check out this one. This is also very nice. It has over 20,000 downloads. So this is also a very nice extension that automates this. You can create translations with Google Sheet. So this is from Alois Daniel, but there are many, many ways to do it. And you can do it however you like. One last important thing, so be aware of the directionality in different languages. Also take into account the word lengths. And very, very important thing is whenever you start your new app, just start with the internationalization support, because it will be much more easy in the long run to have it from the beginning than to add it afterwards if you have your application ready and you have to find all the strings and export them and so on. This may be very difficult to do in advanced stage. Just start it at the beginning, and it will pay off later if you will just try to do it from the beginning. I don't know if there are any questions to me, so if there are, please let me know. Let me check the chat with the organizers. I see that there are some questions. Okay. Okay. How does material theme compare with other themes like Cupertino? Can you talk a bit about it? I believe that there will be Will Larche from material design team in an hour or so. So he's the expert about material theming. But in general, these are like, depending on the like look of your app that you want to achieve, you can use material theme or Cupertino. The material is much more advanced. This is designed by Google, and it allows to create like Google design apps. How to manage in-app layout while handling RTL and LTR languages in Flutter. So this is also a very complex topic. So for instance, I showed you that you can use this alignment widgets. So let me go back to this. So here you saw that you can take into account the alignment widgets and check on your own. I really recommend to try this package called Device Preview. This allows us to change the directionality of the app. You can also check the current directionality via the directionality of. So there is this very handy widget called directionality, and you just call directionality of context, and you will be able to check what is the current text directionality. What are the VS Code extension you are using? So the first one, like the most important for today, was this Flutter Intl. I really, really recommend it. Let me find it. I don't have it open yet, but so this is this one. Yeah, so this is a very nice extension. I really recommend it. And I also have some others, like some snippets, some bracket coloring, and so on. So this is like, okay. Are there any other questions? I think not. So thanks a lot. I hope you will have great time during the next presentations. I'm Dominik. Please find me online. I'm on my website, roszkowski.dev, also on Twitter. This presentation is available online. So if you want to check out the slides, this is available under this address. So I18N presentation-skia, because this is rendered with Skia, CodeMagic.app. So if you want to check out, please go to the address. Please check out my other works with Flutter, my other presentations, and so on. Thank you very much. I hope you will have great time during the next presentations. Great job, guys, for carrying out this conference. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dominik, for coming here to tell us all about localization and internationalization. So, if I talk about me, I have never tried to implement localization, but thank you for your information. And for India, I guess many developers will find this very useful because we have more than 22 official languages, and there are way too many other languages. And I hope they will be able to build a app for their community and India as a whole, or go international. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, Aditya. So, who is
Yeah,
the next speaker? So, I guess he's Bhavesh Daswani.
yeah.
So, I know he's from Ahmedabad because he comes to our meetups with Flutter Ahmedabad. So, please introduce Bhavesh.
Yeah, so guys, our next speaker is Bhavesh Daswani. He is a passionate developer, always looking to advance his skills and update himself. He is also a full stack developer. Bhavesh is also a blogger who comes with an ideology that is you share more, you learn more. Now he is here to share his knowledge on state management. So I think we'll just welcome Bhavesh. Yeah.
Hi,
Hello,
Bhavesh.
Bhavesh.
Hi.
So, welcome to the stream, and I hope you are well. And I guess your topic is state management uh, techniques, and I think this is a very controversial topic. So, best of luck. And
Yeah, exactly.
so, uh, I personally use Mobex, and I've tried Block, but I like Mobex more. What about you, Aditya?
So I haven't got that. I haven't tried yet, but like I'm into like more developing UIs with Flutter. So I haven't got that like
Okay,
deep
don't
in
worry.
Flutter.
Bhavesh will be able to
Yeah.
clarify everything about state management and if you need one or not. Because, yeah. So, over to you, Bhavesh.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, hi, myself, Bhavesh Daswani, and our topic is on state management. Let me share my screen. So, is my screen visible? Okay. We have heard about the state management. Wait a second. Is my screen visible or not? I cannot get it. Okay, okay. Myself, Bhavesh Daswani, and our topic is on state management in Flutter. Before going in that, let me introduce myself. I am a YouTuber, blogger, engineer, and I'm a full stack developer. And my tech stack are Flutter, React Native, React, Laravel, Node.js, and I am daily upgrading myself. I am available in the following platform: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can follow me there and get the latest updates about my blogs and videos. I initially started writing articles on Mediums and Dev2. Then I shifted to my personal blog as there I have more customization, and recently I started my YouTube channel Geeky Coders. Before moving to our topic about the state management, I want to give you advice which will help you to get most of this presentation. The advice is to unlearn and relearn. That is, from whichever technology you are coming from, like let it be Android or iOS or some other technologies. My advice is to not compare between different technologies. Like in Flutter, state work like this, in iOS, how it was working. Please do not do this. It will make things hard to grasp. Just be like fresher. It will give you two advantages. You will be grasping new concept faster, and secondly, you will be enjoying without confusing yourself. I use this concept while learning any new technology, and this is why I can learn this much of frameworks like Laravel, React, React Native, and can easily switch between them. Now let's move to our today's agenda. Start thinking declaratively. Here I will explain you the difference between imperative versus declarative approach. This is the core to understand. If you understand this concept, I guarantee you that state management will be very easy for you. Then the next topic is local versus app state. Here I will explain you about state, what it is, which state are classified as local or widget level state, and which state is classified as app-wide state. Then I will go into list of state management approach. Here I will be listing different approaches for state management. That is, what option do we have? Here will be discussed for state management. Then the next topic I will discussing is like my suggestion to make state management easy. Here I will discuss or share my thoughts for state management, how I approach for it, and other suggestions. Demo. The last part is demo. Here we will see the state management in action. So let's move to our first agenda. Start thinking declaratively. Before going into imperative and declarative, let me provide you a live example of what happened when I was trying to explain one of my Android friend of state management in Flutter. I was having phone call with my friend few days ago. We were discussing on some app issues that later resolved. So as issue was resolved, we were free. After that, so I decided to teach him about state management via the phone call. And before going directly to the state management, I started discussing about imperative versus declarative approach. I asked him, if you have a text view with the initial text good morning and a button below it, when I press the button, the text should change to good evening. How would you approach? He said it is simple. On the button click call text view set text. Okay. So I asked, does the text view will be re-rendered, that is built from scratch again? He said no. The text will view remain as it is, only the text will change. This is what we say imperative approach. We are mutating. We are mutating the original text label. Okay, this is imperative approach. That is mutating the original object. Then I try to explain him about how it works in Flutter. In Flutter, for same, we have to take text widget with text good morning and a raise button. Anyone you can take like raise button, flat button, icon button. Here I'm going was with raise button. When I press the button, I change the text from good morning to good evening. And the text widget is rebuilt from scratch to show good evening text. and the original text widget is not mutated, and this is what we call declarative approach. This declarative approach means you are actually setting the state and your widget is rebuilding from the scratch. He then asked me that will it not be performance issue like building from scratch for each change? I said no. Flutter is fast and smart enough to do it more efficiently. Are you getting my point about declarative approach? You can comment it with yes or no so I can know about it. Okay. Now, as you understand about imperative and declarative approach, one query that normally comes, that is, if there is an imperative approach already, if imperative approach is already there, like in Android, iOS is already using the imperative approach, why Flutter choose declarative approach? The answer is simple. In imperative approach, you both have to manage to change the data and to present it effect in the UI. So you are changing the text from good morning to good evening. Okay, this data has been changed, but also you want to make it effect in the UI, like doing text label dot set text. Okay, in declarative approach, you only set the data, and the UI changes is handled by Flutter framework. So to ease the burden on the developer, Flutter choose to go with declarative approach. Are you getting my point? Why the Flutter choose declarative approach? Okay. So now you understand about the difference between the imperative and declarative approach. Now it's time to move to our main topic, that is state. Okay. So before moving on that, how to change the UI in declarative framework like Flutter, like how Flutter do it more efficiently. In Flutter, everything is widget, that they are immutable. Flutter widgets are immutable. That is, you cannot mutate the widget directly. If I have to change the text from the good morning to good evening in a text widget, I cannot mutate the text widget directly, like text widget dot set text to good evening. This is not allowed in Flutter. You can change the text using the set state method in a stateful widget. I will explain about the set state later in the presentation, but the thing to understand is that when I call the set state method, widget triggers the rebuild and construct the new widget subtree. So you can see the change on the screen. Are you getting how how Flutter is doing UI declaratively or changing it? Okay. I believe that for the first time to understand declarative approach might seem difficult, but I am trying my best to make it very easy and clear for you, because this is the base. Understanding it will make the state management easy to understand. I hope you are getting my point. Okay. Okay, so let's move to our topic, state. These are some of the slides that I discussed you. Okay. So let's to move to our core topic, that is state. So let's understand what is state. State means data which affects the UI. and which might change over the time. There are two types of state in any app you build, that are local state and the app state. So let's first discuss about local state. Local state is also called emperor state or UI state. The state that affect only a widget on its own, that is it does not affect other widget, is called local state. For example, should a loading spinner be displayed? Like if we have some HTTP call from for a widget, so should the loader spinner should be there or the data has been there? Such type of state affects only the current widget. So we use the local state. Other example for this could be form input, form validations, etc. Okay. For local state, you use stateful widget. If stateful or stateless widget is new to you, I have provided a reference link in the end of the presentation slide. Okay? Is clear to you about the local state? Like when the local state is used, what is the local state, how we can manage the local state? Is that being clear to you? Okay. So let's move to our next topic, that is app state. The state that affect the entire app or a significant part of the app is the app state. In other words, state that you want to share across many parts of your app is app state. For example, user login info, user preference, shopping carts, etc. are example of app state. App state we can say about app state like the user login information that is needed in many of the widgets. So the state that is used in more than one widget, 2 or 4 or multiples, we can consider it as an app state. To summarize which state to use, let's focus on a diagram. There is an data. If it's needed by most widget or some widget, then go for app state. If the data is needed only a single widget, then go for local state. So now let's move to the state management option or approaches. Before moving to that, I would like to know that if are you getting the local state, app state, because this is core to understand. Before you after this only you can understand or go to the what are the different options are available to you. Okay, good. The list of the state management approaches. What are the different approaches are available to us for managing the state? For local state, use stateful widget. For app state, there are many options available like inherited widget, provider, Redux, block, movex. Okay, these are the different approaches that we have. Okay, and there are many of what we can say, as Sunny was telling about, there are many approaches people likes like block, movex, but what to choose or when to choose what depend upon the project we are working on. Here are some of the suggestions to make the state management easy. First, understand the core concept. Like try to clear the core concept of state management first, like what is the state, types of state. Choose the state management approach that is simple, like provider package. It is also recommended by the Flutter team as it is simple to get started. The second tip I want to give is like understand a single logic that if state is being used in single widget, use local state, while the state is used by multiple widget, go for app state. Then the next tip I want to give, understand the core topics so strong that you do not need to Google for it. And this point really helped me a lot. I understand the core topic first, then I never Google on it. Like for the base topic, I never Google it, and it is very useful that if you understand the core topics and do not Google for that. These are the some tips that might help you. Now I will provide a brief introduction to provider package as that state management approach I am going to use in the demo. Done? Okay, wait. I think there is a net issue with me. Wait a second. Is my screen properly visible? Is my screen properly visible? Okay. Now I will provide a brief introduction to provider package. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now I will provide a brief introduction to provider package as that state management approach I am going to use in the demo. The reason to choose the provider package is that it is easy to understand and it also uses concepts that are applicable to other approaches. It has three important concepts: chain notifier provider, and consumer. I will more explain about them in demo. So first, check out the demo app is splitted. In the demo app that I have provided to you, here we have, okay, wait a second. Here we have two screens, my catalog screen and my cart screen. And the my catalog has my app bar and my list item. Okay, so is my voice audible? Okay, so we have approx 5 widgets. Many of them need to access the state that belongs elsewhere. For example, my list item needs to add itself to cart and want to see whether the currently item is already in the cart or not. Okay. Okay, let me provide you the demo. Okay, here is our app. Here I have the catalog screen, and in the list I am showing the different catalog list here. Okay, and is my screen visible? The catalog app screen. Okay, okay. So if I add here and I go to the card screen, I am seeing the card list here. So here we have two state, catalog list and cart list. These two are required in both screen, like catalog list is being used in catalog screen as well as in the cart screen. Same apply to cart list. Same apply to cart list. So we will take this both state as app state and use provider package to manage the state and let see it in action. Okay, so this is my catalog screen, and this is the catalog list state from where I can see the list of the catalog, and there is an add button which will add this card, this catalog to the category screen. Okay, and this is the amount that we don't want to focus for now, but how the button is changed, like if I added this to the cart, this catalog button, the add button changed to the tick mark. This is all managed using the catalog list state and the cart state. Okay, so let's check out this in the code. I am providing the direct code. Okay, so because I don't want to consume the time in the writing the code and consume the time, as we have limited time, and in the limited time I want to provide the max to you. Okay, so let's move to the code where I can provide you like how this code architecture has been done. Is my Visual Studio Code visible? If yes, please comment yes so I can move further. Because the okay, thank you. Here I have two models, two state. That is, I will be explaining about the change notifier, like the first part of the provider package. Okay, so now we have understand that we have two state. First it is cart and second is the catalog. Okay, so we are creating two models, the cart and the catalog. The catalog has the list of the items, like these are the different items. Okay, and these are different methods like get by ID, get by position, different methods which are used in the widgets. And there is another model, card dart. Card model extends the change notifier. You have noticed that there is two models like cart and catalog. Catalog does not extend to the chain notifier because our catalog list is fixed, it is static, so it does not need to extend the chain notifier. Chain notifier only extends to the models or the state that are to be changed. Here our cart list will be changed when we click on the add button. Okay, so are you getting my point about the why I not use the extend notify in the catalog and used in the card model. Okay. So in the chain notifier in this card model, so this is all about the chain notifier, first part of the provider package. Now let's move to the main.dart, where I will explain about where the chain notifier provider has to be used. The chain notifier provider works like you have the source. The source is our cart and catalog, and the provider is our main.dart file, from where the data will be provided to its child widget. The child widgets are cart.dart and catalog.dart. In the first this line, for the catalog provider, the catalog model is static, so I have used simple provider because it's not going to change. And in the second, I am using change notifier proxy provider, because chain notifier proxy provider is a special class in which if your model depends on another model or like depends on another state. Here my card model depends on the catalog model. For that the first type is catalog model, for which my card model depends on, and the second is for which we are providing the data, that is card model. Okay, so let's move to the consumer part. Now I have discussed about the provider, like the source. The second is our provider from the source. The source should be the nearest parent from which widget we are consuming. In this app, the cart and catalog screen, the parent of these two screen is the main.dart. So I have provided the provider. So try to make the provider nearest to your child. So let's move to our third part, that is consumer. Consumer are like consuming the data that is being changed in your model. So let's first talk about provider of. Provider of is used when you want the data outside of your widget. Okay, let me increase the font size. Okay. Is that okay? Is that visible? Is that okay? Soeb Khan, now is okay. I have increased the font. So please provide your. Okay. Now I have increased the font and it's visible to the viewer. Let's move to our consumer part. In the consumer part, we have two things. The provider package provide, that is provider of, and the consumer widget itself. Now first we will discuss about the provider of. Provider of is used when you want to access the data outside of your widget. Okay, and provider of needs a type. Provider of needs a type for which you want to consume the data. Okay, here I want to consume cart model, so I have type hinted cart model and I have not used listen false. I have not used listen false. Okay, listen false, what will it will do? It will only accept the data and whenever it is changed, it will not update the widget. So listen false is useful when you have some buttons like add to cart or add to cart. There I can use listen false because there I don't want to update the UI. I only want to action it. So for such case, you can use listen false. And this code is responsible for this part. This code you can see on the screen is responsible for this part. When suppose I am doing listen false, okay? I am doing listen false, and if I go to the cart and click on add and go to the cart, here it is being there. Reason is that there is another widget below consumer, due to which this screen is being rebuilt. That's why you can see the interpreter. Else if you do like listen false, your UI will not be updated. Here it is updating because there is another consumer in the list, due to which this is being updated. Okay, so now we provide you another option that provider package provide is consumer. And before explaining me this part, I want to show you that for which this code is responsible for. For this UI, $126, this part is responsible. Okay. The consumer widget is useful when you want your model or the state in the widget directly in the widget, or you want to do some kind of optimization. You have a long widget and you want particular part to be rebuilt, so you can use the consumer widget at that time. Okay, so let me explain what is being passed here. This is the context which is being passed by the Flutter itself. This is the card, this is the instance of the model that we are using. Like I am type hinting card model, so the card model in the model will be provided here, and I am showing the card total price. And child is used for optimization purpose. There is an query like when to use consumer and when to use provider of. It's very nice query. Like if you are using this thing, okay, forward about the listen false, your whole widget will be rebuilt. Your whole widget will be rebuilt. And if you have no problem, like okay, my widget rebuild, I have no issues, that there are some parts that need to be rebuilt, so you can use the provider. But you are sure if you have 80-90 lines of your widget code and you know that only the 10 lines of the code should be updated, not the whole widget should be updated, at that time you can use consumer and place the consumer at that point which you want to rebuild, so your app performance will improve and not all your widget tree will be rebuilt. Are you getting my point? The provider package is the best to use if you are the beginner or if you want to have simple approach. You can see how easy it is. I defined my source card.dart. I defined my provider, my parent from where the widget will be, from where part I will be getting the data. So here my parent is the main.dart and my consumer, and your app level state has been maintained easily. Okay, so if you are a new or want a very simple approach for the app level state, you should go for provider, and it also has been recommended by the Flutter team. Let me show you. This is the example I have picked for you because this is the most descriptive example I have used. And here you can see this line. This is on this page we are going to use provider package. If you are new to Flutter and you don't have a strong reason to choose another approach, this is probably the approach you should start with. The provider package is easy to understand and it doesn't use much code. It also uses the concept that are applicable to every other approach. Here, why I have used this part, okay, this ready-made code, why I have used this? Because sometimes what you have, like I have given you explanation and you have to read in the YouTube video for 10 to 15 minutes. So that's no, not everyone like that. Here in the example, they have clearly stated that why and where to use the provider package. Here they have given the exact details. So I have used this example so my presentation and you and the Flutter team all goes in the sync. So you don't have to look on the my code, then search in the Google why he is doing like this. I have used this package, I have used this code, so it will be become more and more easy for you because you read it very easily. They have provided like chain notifier, why you use chain notifier, for what reason chain notifier provider you use, consumer you use. I have shown in the video. If you read again, so if you are new to a state management, if you are new to the provider package, 110% after reading one more time, one more seeing the video, you are completely free or completely grasping this topic about the state management. Okay, let's give. I have also included links in the references like the source code, the Flutter documentation, the provider package, the set state, stateful versus stateless widget, documentation for the demo. I have provided all the link you required to master the Flutter. But one thing you will know where you will get, that is the declarative approach. And you, if you are coming from Android or iOS background, if you are coming from an Android and iOS background, and you are directly moving to the state, like you are directly coming trying to managing the state there, I recommended that you first understand the difference between the imperative approach and declarative approach. If that concept is clear to you, then I am guaranteeing you that within hours you can clear new app state management. Whatever approach you choose, my suggestion is to go easy. And this is from my part. And you can follow me on the Twitter if you want. If you want to get latest updates like that. I'm not promoting myself. I'm just presenting myself that I'm there. If you want, you can. So I'm stopping my slide. Anyone from the Flutter team?
Yeah. Hello, Bhavesh. It was like
Yes.
a great talk. I got a lot of insight. So I just we just have questions, like few questions.
Okay.
So, can you tell me like why do we actually need to manage state? Is there any option for that?
Can you pardon your question? I cannot hear your voice
Yeah, yeah.
clearly.
Hello, am I
Yep.
audible? Yeah.
Yes.
So, why do we need? Why do we actually need to manage state? Is there any other option to that?
This
Hello.
question is like presented wrongly. The
Okay.
thing that I am thinking that the questioner is asking like why we are using different state management approach. Can we do not directly do it directly without using any approach? Is that right?
Uh, yeah, is it? Yeah.
Okay. We can do it. We can do it. There you can see an example. There we can, without using any approach, we can manage any state, local state, app state, without using any approach, consumer, nothing. If you read this documentation, they have clearly given you an example where you do not use any of the state management approach and you directly use only stateful widget and you manage your state very easily. But what it became cumbersome when you have to pass the callback from the parent to the child, and in the Flutter you do not have imperative approach. You cannot modify this your view directly. You have to update your state, and as your state update, your view gets re-rendered. So using the approach will easily will apply what we can say will easy your state management.
Okay. So yeah, that was like good answer. So I like to thank you that you came and presented this talk. Again, thank you so much for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bhavesh, for coming, and thank you, Aditya, for thanking him. So, guys, our next speaker is Will Larche.
Can I
Yeah.
say one thing?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, as I am from started my career from little bit. 1 minute I will take you. It will be a
Hi.
motivation for you. Okay, I have started my career from core PHP. Then I will go from the coordinator. Then I go from Laravel. Then I go till Node. Then I go to React. Then I go to the React Native. Then I go to the Flutter. The main thing I understand that if you understand the code, you can easily master anything. And I can code easily, like if I in the morning I have to code about the JS, and in the noon or in the evening I have to code for the Dart, I can easily do it without any confusion, like, oh, what is in JS, I think of it not working in the Dart. I don't feel like that, because my core concepts are clear and I don't Google for it, and so I can change to different framework very easily. Okay, that's what from my side. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Flutter team, providing me such a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, well, guys, thank you, Aditya. So, I would like to welcome our third speaker. So, our third speaker was actually an iOS engineer, and right now he's a Flutter software engineer at Material. So, all the material designs that he uses in Flutter is actually the brains behind all the material.io material designs used in Flutter. Is here to tell you about what are the material designs and the new updates there are in Flutter designs. So, I would like to welcome Mr. Will Larche to give a talk on the platform.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. And to the previous speaker, great job. That was a wonderful talk. It's really exciting to see that people are getting passionate about Flutter and sharing things that they're learning with so many other people. I'm going to try to share my screen right now. So let me know if it doesn't work. All right, looks like you can see that then. Just a second. Okay, great. So yes, my name is Will Larche. I am the Flutter engineering lead for material design here at Google. We're a team that works very closely with the Flutter team on executing design engineering for all the libraries that help you execute the front ends of your applications. Today, I'm going to go through a few things about front-end engineering in Flutter that I want to make sure everybody's seen, and a couple things that are really pretty new. One, I'm going to talk about Flutter Interact, which was the event that we had in December, and our big focus on design execution. I'm going to talk about some new packages that we have, including the Google Fonts package, the Basics package, and our new Animations package. And then I'm going to show you our new Flutter Gallery and dive into a few details of it, how we're accomplishing adaptive layout, some easy ways of making your app more accessible, making your app localized and internationalized, and then some best practices for optimizing for performance. So first, a big thank you to Flutter India. India is one of the top 5 territories for Flutter adoption, and we're very excited to have an opportunity to engage even more with this community. Furthermore, I also just want to say that I hope everyone online and your families are all safe during this pandemic. It's a very unusual time, so it's wonderful that there is a conference that people can attend online so that we can still have a way to interact with you and people can still learn more things and share their excitement about Flutter. We really appreciate everything the organizers have done this year. Thank you. Of course, what makes Flutter so special is our community. It is all of you. We could make as much of a tool as we want, but if people aren't using it, then it really doesn't mean anything. We're seeing that some of our dreams with Flutter are really coming true. We hoped that this would lead to the democratization of mobile, and it looks like that's actually happening. You know, when the web came out, I've said this before, anyone could make a web page. If you just learned a little bit of HTML, you could type something up, get it hosted somewhere, and then send your friends to go look at it. But with mobile apps, that's never been the case. There's always such a high barrier to entry for creating an iOS app or an Android app. People haven't really had the chance to play unless they become an expert in it. We hoped with Flutter that maybe we'd be able to give people a tool that was so easy to get started with that people could experiment and express their own creativity and curiosity through mobile applications, something that we've had for a decade but has been difficult for people to get into. And we're really starting to see that that's coming true with some of the projects that people are making with Flutter, and also some of the feedback we're getting that a lot of people who are working with Flutter weren't working in mobile apps before. Maybe they were back-end engineers or they were web engineers, or sometimes not even engineers at all. So it's really exciting to see that promise of Flutter being realized. Now, we like to think that there are 3 ways to use Flutter today. One way is to start a new app from scratch. Obviously, you have a brand new project and you can just begin from that. Or you could add another app on another platform. Sorry, add another platform to the same app that you have. So maybe you already have an Android app, but you've always wanted to have an iOS app. It might be a good time for you to use Flutter to build that iOS app instead of native UI kit, because like I said, the barrier to entry for learning it is lower, so you might be able to get that iOS app faster. We hope that you would. But of course, people are also using Flutter to just create a new part of an app that already exists. We have a really great add to app experience. We've invested a lot in expanding it and hardening it for the past year. And there are a lot of apps out in the world right now that already existed, wanted to try out Flutter, didn't want to throw away everything they had. So they said, let's make this new feature, this next part of it in Flutter and see how it does. And that's a really great way to get started in Flutter and have your team start to learn a little more about Flutter before you know that you're ready for a commitment to changing your entire code base over to Flutter. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Now, it's been an incredible ride since we started releasing Flutter 1.0, which was about a year and a half ago now. We have over 1 million developers, although I think actually that number's gone up. I think Tim Sneath might have announced this week that it was even higher. There are hundreds of millions of users of Flutter apps, which means the apps that are out there in the world are reaching people. They are impactful. It's not just hobbyists, but also big companies, medium companies, small companies. And LinkedIn named Flutter as the #1 fastest growing skill in 2019, which is unbelievable. And it's the top 10 most liked, it's in the top 10 most liked GitHub repos worldwide. And it's actually beat recently Linux and React Native. And we're so new. I mean, you know, we're just 6-ish years old right now. So to already get into the top 10, much less beat some of the things that are so important to the technology world just in that ranking, really shows us that people are liking what we're doing. And that's the kind of feedback that we need in order to know what things to invest in the future. A few months ago, GitHub released their State of the Octaverse report. They're the largest site for open source, so they really have a unique insight into the open source community and trends amongst open source adoption. And we were really delighted to see that in the report, Flutter was the second fastest growing open source project across their site, with nearly 3 times the growth compared to last year. And that the Dart language that powers Flutter is the single fastest growing language that they measure. It's even faster than growing than really popular languages like Rust and TypeScript, which are also having a really big moment right now. So thank you for everything you've done to help us get those really great accolades. All right, so Flutter Interact. What was Flutter Interact? Flutter Interact was this event that we had in December in Brooklyn. I suggested Brooklyn. I told them that it was because it was such a great design scene and so close to art and culture being in New York, but really it was just because I live in Brooklyn, so I didn't have to commute very far, just a couple of subway stops. And I really appreciate the Flutter team buying into my lies. But it's not lies. No, of course, Brooklyn really is an important place for the design scene. And this is what we really wanted to connect to this year. We wanted to show that design is key to Flutter, that we really care about executing beautiful apps, really immersive experiences, really high-end products can be made with Flutter, and that we're a part of the new ambient computing world, which is one of the visions that Google has, which is software being able to run anywhere. So that now you don't have to ask this question of like, where do I want my app to run? Do I want this to be a website? Do I want this to be for phones? If so, what kind of phone? Am I making a watch app, or am I making a TV app? Am I making an app for some other kind of device? These are the kinds of questions that people have had to ask themselves before they do development in the past, whereas now we would like to say, what do you want to build? Don't worry about where you're going to distribute it. Go ahead and think about your product first. Design it, develop it, play with it, experiment, and then with Flutter, you can distribute it in many, many different places. macOS, Linux, Windows, these are all things that we've invested a lot of time in lately and are showing some really exciting promise. This is all part of our ambient computing vision, this idea that software should be aware of as much as possible that's necessary to give a good experience. So if you're going to have an app that's on TV and on watches and on computers and on phones, they really should be connected to each other. And probably the best way to do that is to have a single code base. If it's the same piece of software that's running on all those different things, then the software doesn't have to communicate with other software. It's the same software. It's like having a stateful life in some ways. Google's really excited about, instead of thinking of the world as fragmentation into many different kinds of form factors and devices, rather that they're just different screens for showing the different parts of the same experience that somebody might need in a different moment in their life. And that's ambient computing. And Flutter is Google's ambient computing platform. Another place where you can see our commitment to design and ambient computing is in Google's smart display devices, like the Nest Home Hub, where Google actually chose Flutter to build the UI for it. It's a beautiful expression of Google Material, which is Google's theme of material design, on a totally new type of display. We're seeing that the adoption for this is really great and people are really excited about it. And it's like Flutter is now in people's homes, which is really, really cool. So to make all this possible, Flutter has made a really big investment in beautiful design execution and adaptive experiences. You need to adapt for all those different form factors and devices. And the world has actually noticed a little bit. A couple of exciting things have happened. Flutter was named as one of the 14 most important design ideas of the decade by Fast Company magazine. And of course, lists like this happen all the time, and we always try to take them with a grain of salt. But this time, we couldn't help but be a little extra excited because the person on behalf of Fast Company that chose us was John Maeda, who is one of the most important people in the history of digital design. He is, a design god, and they've put us in this list alongside things like the iPad, the Tesla Model S, and social media. So those are some pretty big shoes to fill. And it's kind of amazing that this designer, this design leader, knows what Flutter is and sees the possibility and promise that Flutter brings to designers for executing their beautiful designs with the engineers that they work with. Really, really honored to have that. When I think about the designer-developer relationship, I kind of think about this problem that Flutter is trying to solve. Right now, when design is ready for handoff, that is when development can begin. But development takes much longer than design does. So over time, you get really, really out of sync. And I wish that it were always as clean as this graph is, but it's not. Usually it's, development's going longer and design is having to come back to things and revisit things, and it gets all mixed up, and all the colors here would be kind of all over the place. And everybody's mad at the engineers and saying, the designers only took a week to make this. Why is it taking you a month to build it? And then you have to explain software development to product people again. Be like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation again in my career. And it's a bit of a waste of time. If design is always able to go faster than engineering is, then that does mean there's going to be downtime for design, time when design could instead be collaborating with engineering. Our goal with Flutter is to get to that ideal aligned development cadence, where development is just as fast as design. Obviously, we're not there yet, but we have improved the speed of development so that we're closer to this. And this is kind of like our North Star, the thing that we would really love to be able to say and to hit someday. And with some of the tools that are coming out right now, we begin to blur the lines between design and development itself. Now, development can actually begin while design is still in their phases. So maybe designers do tiny parts of development to help with that handoff. There are tools that have come out from Supernova, and Adobe has announced a plugin for Flutter for XD. These things export code from designs. So the designers are still working in a design surface, but they're able to create some code that can then be used to smooth over the handoff to the engineers. So it may not necessarily be production code, but it's code that can help you understand when you're looking at it, what is the corner radius? What is this color? What is this size? What is this typeface that's being chosen here? Well, if we're showing you all the code that it takes in order to accomplish that, we're saving you a little bit of time from having to go inspect a file and then write your own text style with this color and with this typeface in it. We've already given it to you, exported from the place where the designers made that choice themselves. So you can usually copy pieces of that code then back into your production app. And my team this year released a really big package that's also helping people execute design, which is Google Fonts for Flutter. If you haven't heard of Google Fonts, it's one of Google's oldest investments in creativity and accessibility. We first launched it in 2010, so it's 10 years old now. It's an open source catalog of hundreds of beautiful typefaces that anybody can use in their product without having to pay a licensing fee. You have to attribute it, but that's all that's asked for it. And we work with design and font foundries all across the world to create new ones and to expand existing ones to include more alphabets, like for new languages like Vietnamese and Cyrillic and all sorts of things that make these fonts more useful to more people in more markets. So this is how it works. After you've imported the package, you get these autocomplete suggestions from Google Fonts. It downloads that font and adds it to your app. With hot reload, it just appears. So you can kind of see here that the engineer is typing out the font that they want, the IDE helps them finish it, and then the app automatically changes because it downloads it. And now what's really exciting about this is that's an incredible improvement to the developer experience working with fonts inside Flutter. Before Google Fonts, there was a lot of room for error. There were all sorts of things that you had to type explicitly. I'm gonna get my cat to get down, kitty. Sorry, this is the new world we live in. Oh, come on. So you had to type in paths of where these font files were, and then in the pub spec, it was always like, oh, you should put it in a font folder, but is the font folder inside the assets folder? Do I have to have a fonts folder? Does it start with a slash? Does it not start with a slash? How many spaces have to be there before the first one? Because of course with YAML, spaces are like an important part of how you actually write your files. Without the right white space, they don't work. And there wasn't any feedback from the IDE about whether or not the thing you had typed was going to actually point to a font. And then you had to use strings in order to get that back inside your code. You had to type out the name of the font family. There was just, maybe while those things didn't seem too complicated, there was a lot of room for simple errors that can be very frustrating because you don't know if where you made that mistake, that you were supposed to put that slash at the beginning maybe and you didn't. And this all came about because one day I was making an example app for a talk like this, and I was like, great, I throw the font in there to make it look the way I want to, and nothing happened. And I could not figure out for about 20 minutes what was going on. And I said, this is just too much. There's got to be a better way. If I, who work on this project, can't figure out what I've done wrong to get the font that I want in there, because of course we don't add fonts very often. We do it maybe once or twice at the beginning of a project and then not again until the next project comes along, then I can only imagine that other people out there are probably having frustrating experiences too. And with something as basic as that, it shouldn't be a frustrating experience. It should be a really easy experience. So we collaborated with the Google Fonts team to talk about what our options were and came up with this package. Now, there are some fringe benefits that come out with this as well. You can actually help make sure that your app is getting the right fonts to the right people so that people don't have to download any extra app than they need to, because these load at runtime. These are downloaded from the internet, just like if you were using Google Fonts on the web. And so right now, if you looked at this app, if you wanted to have the normal, sorry, not normal, if you wanted to have the Latin alphabet, it's just 0.4 megabytes because the Latin alphabet is pretty small. But as soon as you start thinking about adding in maybe traditional Chinese, the character sets are very, very large. And when you add in other weights to your font, that adds up to an awful lot of weight for your app. You can see here that adds another 33.5 megabytes to support Chinese with the kinds of fonts the designer here has asked for. And so I could easily imagine product people saying, it's not worth it to have 3 fonts then for Chinese, we'll just have one. So all Chinese text ends up looking the same. There's a lot less expression. The experience is a little less expensive feeling than the Latin version. And we also have research that shows that for every megabyte that your app weighs in the store, either in the App Store or in the Play Store, fewer people will download it. It is a very, very simple, I can't express exactly what the formula is because I forget, but you want your app to be as small as possible because more people will download it. You know, in the US, we're very used to having unlimited Wi-Fi and stuff like that. And it's really easy for American engineers to forget that in other parts of the world, people are counting every single megabyte or even kilobyte of their internet service. And so they're going to judge very carefully whether or not they choose to download your app based on what it's going to cost them. Even if it's a free app, it's going to cost them a kind of currency, which is their internet supply, their data supply for the month. So the smaller your app can be, the better. So while it's true that if someone were looking at your app with traditional Chinese, the app would then still need to download that 33.5 megabytes. It does mean that everybody else will not. So you can ship just what's necessary to just the audiences that need it and save a whole bunch of people a whole bunch of data. Now the Google Fonts package is available on pub.dev. At Flutter Interact, we launched it into beta, and now I'm really excited to say that as of last week, it's out of beta, it's in 1.0. And here's some new stuff going on inside it. You can now dynamically load fonts and themes. So if for some reason you had an app maybe with a drop-down of menu that you wanted to list different fonts inside and then pass that back as a string for the Google Fonts package to read, instead of having it pre-compiled, you can now do that. You can pass in your fonts as a string at runtime if you needed to. We have secure downloads. We've made sure that the security protocols are like top-notch, Google security. The performance is improved. It's way faster, and we've caught some cases where sometimes the fonts were accidentally being downloaded multiple times, and now they're not. So you definitely get the promise of not having to download too much. And you can now pre-bundle fonts. So instead, if you wanted to, you could disable runtime fetching and instead ship your fonts beforehand, which of course some people want to do so that their app works out of the box offline. Maybe that's important if you're working on an app that's supposed to work in a rural region, or New York, we're always getting special apps for the subway that have to work where there's no internet between stations. But then why would you still use the Google Fonts package? Because it's still a much easier way to get those fonts into your app. Even if you're going to pre-bundle them, this will save you a lot of complexity and heartache, and give you the ability to play with them while you're in development, so you could see some different ones. Just wanted to talk a little bit, just a little under the hood of how a font request that is being made at runtime happens. So let's say that you were calling Google Fonts.lato, or is it Lato? I've never heard anyone say it out loud. We'll say Lato. It's going to see, is this font already bundled in the app's binary? Because of course, if it is, it's smart enough to know I don't have to download it again. And then it's going to say, okay, well, is it cached in the app storage from a prior request? Did this package already download it once before? Because it doesn't want to download it again. And if it's not there, then it fetches it from fonts.google.com over HTTP. We use the protobufs service that they have over there. So we're even trying to make our requests and responses as small as possible. And then it notifies the engine that a new font was loaded, so that the engine can rebuild all the text, and it tells the framework, reload any text widget that had this font assigned to it, so that they can relay themselves out. Google Fonts and Material Design, the team that I work on, and Flutter are kind of an amazing suite of things that Google has that are representing first-class front-end development. We really do believe that we can help you make more beautiful, more usable digital worlds, ambient products. And so that's why it's really great to see that these three teams are working together to make sure that your needs are met. And this is all just beginning. Google is investing a lot in all the things that a person needs to create incredible apps. We think that some of this stuff is going to be pretty transformative. And of course, while we're always talking about new screens like watches and countertop devices, we also understand that old screens are not going away. The web is important. Desktop is important. And so we're thinking of ways that we can make even just basic development faster. And one of the things that came up from one of the engineers on my team was the Dart Basics package. This is available in pub.dev. You just put it in your pub spec, and then you get some really, really great helpers. Just some stuff that can make the way you express yourself in Dart a little bit faster. You get basics of numbers. These are all extension methods, new things for iterables and lists and maps and objects, sets and strings. So you get like .milliseconds, you know? It's a type-safe duration object that behaves like a real number. Common operations, very common operations, like sum on a list. I have 3 numbers in the list, add them up for me. This really easy to read is null check that you can put on any object. And the ability to slice on lists and strings. These are things that are common in other languages that aren't built into Dart. So we said, how can we give this to people for free if it's something that we end up needing ourselves? Other people probably do. So you can go ahead and get the Dart Basics package right now, and maybe it'll save you some time while you're building your app. Now, one of the most exciting things is the collaboration between Material and Flutter on the Animations package. This is also available on pub.dev. It's just called Animations. And it's loading my very big GIF here. This is a package that helps people execute the material design motion system spec. It's the part of material design where we say things are supposed to expand in this way, or fade in this way, or come in from the left in this way with this sort of curve and this sort of values. Let's see if maybe I can get this. If I reload, I get that GIF to show back up, because animation doesn't mean anything if you're just taking my word for it. Let's try again. There we go. So here's an example of something that seems so simple, but is actually so difficult to execute without a little bit of help, which is the container transform. Somebody is tapping on something in your app, and then you really want that thing to expand to the detailed view of it. Of course, you could just push it in from the right or from the bottom, whatever makes sense for the platform that you're running on. But research shows that when you're able to make a connection between the before and after, between I want more information on this and then you're showing me more information on this, people actually have a better user experience. So that's a kind of powerful way to optimize your app, but something that's so difficult to actually accomplish. Now you can do this with just a few lines using the open container class. It's pretty amazing. I've tried it out myself, and it just kind of blew me away with the simplicity. I highly recommend it. And if you'd like to learn more about it, Martin Ryback, who runs the Flutter meetup group here in New York, wrote this really, really great article on it, a deep dive into the Flutter animations package. It's available on Medium. All right, so the new Flutter Gallery. Flutter kind of thinks of form factors right now in 3 buckets. We have mobile, of course, where we started. Then we have desktop, which is Mac OS, Windows, Linux. And then, of course, Flutter Web, which is now beyond alpha. I think I don't know if it's gone into beta yet or something, but they just had a new update this week on medium.com. You can read about some of the new features that are coming out in web. The amount of development going on over on the web team is pretty phenomenal. And so we thought, how can we teach people all these different form factors in design execution and Flutter software development together, instead of having to create different examples for all of them? So the examples that we had really couldn't do that. The one on the left here, what I call version 0, was the Flutter Gallery from 2017. It was really important at the time because there was no other way to show sample code running or to teach people how to use Flutter at the code level. And so some engineers built it simply. It's just an app bar and a list. But unfortunately, that didn't really scale because we have so many widgets now. I think we have 300 widgets or something like that. And if you, of course, not everyone deserves its own demo, but even if it were just a fraction of those, that ends up being a very long list. So when we released Material 2 in 2018, we said, let's see if we can use some of the new principles for material theming to create an app that has a better information architecture that can show more and maybe expand a little bit as the years go by. And so that's what we did. And you can still see this in Flutter's examples / Flutter_gallery directory, I believe. The only issue with this was that I saw a demo by the Flutter web team at a meetup, and they were going into the text field demo on the web, and this is what it looked like. And that is not optimized for desktop. That is a phone-sized form that's been stretched out left and right to the point that it's actually becoming slightly unusable, much less not being a really good selling point for the amazing experiences that people can build on Flutter in a desktop form factor. So we talked it over and realized that rather than just adding in layout for the desktop, we had a really good chance to do a full rebuild because development in Flutter has improved so much since 2018 that we wanted to show all the cool new stuff that had happened since then. And so I worked with this design agency called Toaster. They're amazing. They're in London. And they asked me, what should it look like? Should it look like Google Apps? Is this about building from white and using the Google corporate font and colors and stuff like that? And I said, well, it could be, because of course material's in there and that's Google's design system. But then we also need to have this section where we're showing Apple's iOS design language, the Cupertino library. We really need an app that can demonstrate whatever we have on the front end, not just stuff that looks like it fits into the Google world, because we're actually helping people from companies all over the world with different brands make their products. And we really wanted it to work in dark mode, and we wanted to show off all of our UI APIs, anything that we had going on. So just going from the building from white point of view wasn't going to be sufficient. And I told them, why don't you think outside of a brand right now and think outside of a design system and totally just let your creativity go. If I believe that Flutter can express anything that designers dream up, why don't we really give it a test and have the designers dream up something new? So this is what we've gotten. We went from the old one on the left to the new one on the right here in phone, and then here in desktop. You can see the phone, the old one on desktop for the home screen was just the phone one stretched out, but now it has a very different layout that's specific to desktop. It is adapted for desktop. And there were some key areas of focus for us, some things that needed to be there. We needed, of course, all the existing features that we had, like the material studies, like Shrine and Rally and Crane. And then we needed the material component demos, which is like the bread and butter of what this is about, and the Cupertino demos. But then we wanted to add in these new things. We wanted to add in adaptive layout that people could copy and use in their projects. We wanted to show best practices for accessibility because, as I'll say again later, it is a way to get free users. There are lots of people out there that need accessibility features turned on, and not enough apps are doing that. So if you wanted to easily differentiate yourself and maybe get a little bit of a larger audience, invest just a little bit of time in accessibility so that your app works with the expectations of people who need accessibility features. And of course, internationalization, something this audience probably understands a lot. So if we're saying that places like India and China and Europe are our biggest markets, then we need to make sure that we're really showing people all the sample code it takes to build apps that work across all those markets, not just in whatever one that it was created in. So that, again, you can easily increase the size of your audience without having to invest that much in like marketing or paying for users or something like that. Some simple translations can end up going pretty far. And we thought we should tell people a little more about the components we're showing them and show them code samples for them. So here is an example. Well, here is the Flutter Gallery itself running. So we've got this home screen with the material studies up here. We've added a couple other ones like Fortnightly, which is our adaptive example newspaper app, and a starter app. And this starter app and all the other apps are really great because they're totally responsive. If I take it and there we go, and I shrink it over to phone size, it automatically knows what to do to bring it out. To bring it in. It got rid of the side panel, the navigation rail, and instead put things in this navigation drawer. Pretty great. And everything inside here reacts that way. We down here have the demos, material demos, the Cupertino demos, and some other demos. Let's look at chips. Chips are important, and now you can really see with the mouse you can see the hover states and the highlight states, all the cool stuff that we have going on in there. And look at the code for the actual example. So whatever's happening here, we put the code in here. The dartpad didn't really exist to the point that we could have embedded a dartpad in here. So we said, what's the best, most important thing about dartpad? Being able to teach people the code that makes something happen. So we took inspiration from that and shipped the literal text inside here so you can learn more about it. And again, even this is responsive. So click on the chip that you want to look at, learn more about it, see the demo code, and you can even go out to the API documentation. Let me just get back to the presenter view. Great. So this new Flutter Gallery is now available at gallery.flutter.dev. So anybody can go play with it right now on the web, as well as being available in the Google Play Store. And if you go to flutter.dev and look for the page on examples, you'll be able to download it for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS pre-compiled for you. If you wanted to look at the code for it, we've actually recently moved it. I just wanted to let everybody know. It used to be in Flutter/samples, but now it's in an even more obvious place, Flutter/gallery on github.com. So adaptive layout. How did we accomplish adaptive layout in this? It needed to be to work in both of these form factors. And I'm going to try to skip through some of this because I know I'm going a little bit long. Here's what I really wanted to show you. We have this file, adaptive.dart, that includes this layout helper, where we worked with the Flutter team to decide what we wanted to say best practices were for accomplishing adaptive layout. And it turns out that the best way to do this really is by reading the media query. We created this file just as a helper for this project, but you can go ahead and take it if you want to, just throwing in a couple breakpoints. The media query reads the width, compares it to the breakpoint, and then returns whatever display type this is, so you can make some choices in code pretty easily as to what you want to show. The great thing about using the media query is that any part of a widget tree that has media query in it will automatically rebuild all the children from that media query down whenever the media query changes. So that's why when I change the size of that screen, it automatically responds to it because it's saying media query change, and you don't have to add a listener or something like that. And so you can throw it into some places really easily to say, do I just need to change like a padding size here? Or is this a time that I need to return like pretty much an entirely different layout, a whole different widget tree? Because of course that's sometimes necessary, where the desktop section of your so a section of your app in desktop looks very different than the same section in mobile. Accessibility. We have full support for screen readers, which means working with the semantic library and adding semantic labels and announcements. And we even have an example of custom semantics for graphs. And we have support for text scaling. What's really great is if you come in here, you can see some things that you can play with. One of them being text scaling. Text scaling is the #1 used accessibility feature on mobile. It's something that 40% of the world, I believe, actually has turned on their phones so that they can read things better. But most apps totally break when this happens and throw those warnings all over the place that things don't fit where they're supposed to. So we'll show you some ways of dealing with containers and stuff to support text scaling. And we have support for focus, which enables tab support when you're on a physical keyboard. Real quick, just wanted to say that while it's important to have semantics for everything, sometimes you don't want semantics. Being able to screen read a brand logo doesn't necessarily make sense. Great thing about some things is that they have semantics APIs built into them, like the ability to exclude them or the ability to just set the label that you want. Image is really great for this. Images need a bit of an explanation, or a screen reader can't necessarily figure out what they are, except I think on iOS where Apple has AI to do that. You can read the text scale factor from the media query very easily anywhere you are. If you go, you can look up the custom painter semantics example we have, which is how you can build in a screen reader experience for a chart like that we have in Rally. And internationalization, we have translations for, I think, 70+ languages. It's like the full capabilities of localization and internationalization from Flutter. We worked with our internal translation team to do it, but it's really okay to just go to Google Translate. If you don't know anybody that speaks the language, and of course you maybe can't afford to hire a translator, just doing something by going to Google Translate and putting those strings into your app means that you're trying, and they're probably correct. Obviously, you might lose some nuance. It could end up saying back like the back of your body instead of back like going back. But maybe people will still understand it anyway, and then send you feedback on how to fix that string. I would always recommend to people to just go ahead and try to internationalize your app best that you can, and then wait for people to let you know how you're doing it so that you can easily improve things later. We have RTL support for Hebrew and Arabic and other languages that are RTL. And we even have internationalized accessibility so that people when they need to use the screen reader but don't speak English, now it'll actually read them back the language that they're expecting if we have translations for it, which we do for over 70. Some easy things that you can do, some easy mistakes that people make is doing things like using left instead of start. Start means where you begin reading, so that's left on LTR and right on RTL. You can localize the semantics. Okay, great. So before I'm out of time, I'm glad I got to this part, which is optimizing for web. One of the things that we found between December and then January was that on the web, it takes a few milliseconds for images to download and then to show. And they were flashing and people weren't liking it. And we realized, oh, this is kind of basic. We can create a much more expensive feeling experience by putting in a fade. We created this widget that you can copy from the gallery called Fade in Image. It takes an image and a placeholder that can go behind it and the size that you want it to be and the kind of fit. And then it just uses an animated switcher in order to fade that in. Of course, it doesn't fade it in if you're not on web. You want to check to see if you are on web, because if it's something that you've pre-bundled with your app in a compiled distribution, then it wouldn't make sense to fade it in necessarily. And so that's one way that you can make your web experience more polished. Another thing that we really want people to know about is how to rebuild only what's necessary. We created this kind of fake example in order to illustrate this, but imagine you had a view that was a black view, and then behind it, a white view that had hundreds of little cards all over it, hundreds of children widgets. It can animate smoothly, but most people are going to make a mistake that will prevent it from doing that. So it's a stack. People are going to make something like this usually as a stack because it's something on top of each other. The back, that's the thing with the cards. And then the front is here, wrapped inside a position transition, which can move things up and down pretty easily. A common mistake that people are doing, something they're very tempted to do, is to set up the parent widget this way, where there's obviously you need an animation controller. People will do that in init state, but then they will also add a listener that rebuilds the state, that calls set state anytime there's a tick. There are all sorts of simple animations where that's necessary and where that makes sense. But this is not something that you need to do when you're using an animated widget like the one that we have. And so if you put that in here and it rebuilds that view that has hundreds of cards all over it, the frame rate goes down really fast. It just can't keep up with that amount of recalculation, an unnecessary amount of recalculation too. This is problematic code, having this listener here when you don't need it, when you're using an animated widget already like position transition. So you can actually just get rid of it and it will work perfectly fine. And there's a great list on flutter.dev of which widgets are already animated widgets. They're the implicit animations that you can use. And they know how to rebuild what's inside them automatically when the animation ticks without having to be told to do it again, so that you end up doing twice the amount of work. So just keep an eye out for that. That while this pattern of having a listener for setting state is common, and if you're not using an animated widget, it's how you can accomplish a lot of animations. With an animated widget, it ends up causing jank. So comparison on the left and right, as you can see before, it is pretty janky, and afterwards it's pretty smooth and buttery. And this is what we ended up doing for the settings thing up here. This had a very poor frame rate in December because it had so much going on inside it, including all the different languages that you can look at inside here. And then now we've really optimized it to have a great frame rate. by just rebuilding what we need to rebuild. Oops, wrong window. Okay. All right, so, one little bonus. It now supports progressive web apps too. If you go to Flutter Gallery in Chrome, you're going to see this little plus button up here. This is the ability to install the Flutter Gallery as a progressive web app that will work offline. I don't think I'm sharing the window that it shows up in, but it ends up putting it right into your Chrome apps, which then you can move to your desktop or to applications and always have it working offline. It's a pretty exciting feature. When I saw it on desktop, I was kind of amazed that you can just have your web app running whenever you want to, even offline. It's some amazing new functionality that we've just released. You can learn more about it in the Flutter Web Support Updates Medium article in the Flutter channel that just got released this week. So recap of what we went through. We went through a lot. We talked about Flutter Interact, design execution, and our philosophies around such things, the new packages like Google Fonts, basics, and animations, and the gallery that has examples for adaptive layout, accessibility, localization, and a couple ways that we've optimized for web. And if there are more inside there that you can take a look at, we're going to have a blog post series coming out in the next 4 weeks showing 6 deep dive blog posts on problems that we solved for making our app run faster and smoother on the web, mostly on the web, but of course, almost all the things that we did ended up having a benefit in compiled, native things as well. All right, so questions. I've got like a minute, I'm so sorry.
Hi, Will.
Hello, how are you?
So, so first of all, I would like to ask my own question. So, my question was, recently I was using Google Fonts, and whenever I launch the app for the first time, then I'll see the text on my screen changing from default fonts to the Google font I applied. So is there a way to wait for Google Fonts to load or not show this in front of user?
There is. The experience that you're showing of having the font change kind of like at runtime when it's downloaded is a lot like how things are often on the web. Obviously, the best thing you could do would be to pre-bundle it, which is that new functionality that we have available. But I can also have Anthony and MH who work on that project put up an example of how to wait for that as well. I can't express the code maybe verbally to you because I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that that's possible. So
what's the name of the developer, person you were talking about, Anthony?
Anthony is the TL for that project. And then the other engineer is MH Johnson.
Okay, I'll find them.
Yes, okay. You can also email me. I put my email address up there. It's just my last name, larche@google.com. Everyone, anywhere is welcome to please email me with any feedback or questions at any time. That's necessary for us to be able to communicate with you all. Please reach out anytime.
Yeah, and I have another question. So when we were building this Flutter India website, I am looking at it, and now if I want to select some text of this website, then right now I'm not able to. So I think Flutter web should behave in a way that you can select any text on your screen, and we were using text widget, so I guess Flutter web should by default make text selectable. I mean,
no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'll pass that along to the Flutter web team. I don't actually know what their plans are around selectable text and their roadmap. I do know that we're really looking into Canvas Kit and how it can help us, which I know would be probably a little bit less text selection. So I'll also make sure they know that the expectation you have of the text being selectable. And there might be, I'll see if there's anything they can do to communicate any plans around that too.
Yeah. I'll raise an issue, no problem.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, check to see if there might be an existing one, and then you can, +1 it.
Sure. Yes, do we have any other question from audience?
There are actually some questions from audience. So the first question was, how is the material theme different from other themes like Cupertino, and how could we use it in Flutter? That's the question.
What was the second part?
So they were asking like, how is it different from Cupertino theme? That was the main question for them, and how they use it in Flutter.
It's funny. The Cupertino team, there isn't exactly a Cupertino team. There's a visual design languages team over on Flutter. And we're kind of like brothers. These two teams work really closely together. So I'm in charge of Flutter on material, and then there's a guy, Hans Muller, who's in charge of material on Flutter, and Cupertino on Flutter stuff happens over there too. And this guy, Zhao, runs that as well. The difference between the teams is that the teams directly on Flutter often end up spending most of their time dealing with maintenance and community requests, dealing with pull requests, making corrections. Whereas my team focuses on a lot of stuff having to do with future-facing features, things that our designers and product people are dreaming up that will be released over time, that then we collaborate with the Flutter team on maintaining after that. So that's the main difference.
Okay, so the question is that is there a material design theme used in Fuchsia OS, Flutter?
Material and Fuchsia have always been very close. We share a vice president. Other than that, there's not much I'm allowed to say about Fuchsia. Of course, everything that's available about Fuchsia is in its GitHub repository, so you can find out there. But a lot of designers, I know a lot of the designers on that project and engineers and stuff. And of course, Flutter is the way that you build apps on Fuchsia. So I believe you can use the entire material library on Fuchsia. I don't have a lot of experience with it myself, but we're family in a way, even if we're not directly working on each other's projects.
Yeah, I can understand. So one other question, last question. That is, what is the roadmap for material design in this coming year?
Plans have changed a lot this year because of the pandemic. We're completely reevaluating what is possible based around the needs of our employees. Some people are parents, and so their productivity is greatly changed now that they are home with children who can't be in school and they have to be full-time parents again. And then there are also people who might be taking care of people who are ill or people that are ill themselves. We're kind of slowing down our expectations for a little while we try to figure out what the new normal is. So I don't really want to make any promises except to say that we're working as hard as we can and spending a lot of time working on quality and dealing with the things that we've already made and trying to make sure that they're as strong as possible.
Yeah, because actually about material designs and this is actually about the quality. I'm really
and so this is a really good time. I have 4 engineers that work out of an office in Germany for me who are about to start a project on tech debt and quality. And the way that we're choosing the issues that they're working on is by the number of upvotes on github.com. So I'm telling you people, if you care about something, go upvote it on GitHub, click the emoji for it for the smiley face or whatever on the issue. It is exactly how we prioritize what we're going to work on. And as we're getting started in this big investment in tech debt, it's particularly a good time to have your voice be heard.
Wow, that's actually nice because then it is a user experience that has been counted by the Google.
It has been what?
So it is based on the Google user experience. So what a user needs is being implemented and updated. So that is really nice.
Yes. I mean, we've expanded so much, adding more platforms and web and stuff over the past few years. Now we're taking a year to just kind of catch our breath and make sure that everything we've released gets as polished as possible. So that's why we didn't just leave Google Fonts in beta. We spent the months we needed to get it out of beta. We didn't just leave the gallery as an example of beauty. We also made an example of performance. So this is the investment we're making right now, both in material and in Flutter.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving a session over here and having over here.
Oh,
to
no,
have your-
thank you all so much. It's really wonderful that you all are doing this. We really appreciate all of this excitement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so guys, I would like to welcome Ms. Poonam Jha during the expert session and during the hosting session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. We are really thankful to everyone who are still with us, and we are really no so glad that you guys can watch this YouTube video anytime whenever you want to. So that's why we'll try to put as good as content we can put on for you. And yeah, just a quick recap that what we have done so far in these 3 days. Before we move on to the town expert panel, where we have some people who can take up some general questions that can probably help you to if you have recently started with Flutter, if you are almost there, you're struggling with some more clarity to how to be a better programmer in Flutter, probably this panel would be there. So if we sincerely apologize if we cannot take more questions, but we'll try to make as good like as more as we can. Later on we'll keep it for offline or for some Twitter inboxes probably. So yeah, a quick recap what we have done so far. Yesterday we had a keynote by Nilay. Then we had a great session by Grips on Flutter Future and a sing by Gazian, and responsive web apps by Hasnan. Today even we had a great day. Again, Dominik it talked about efficient internationalization of Flutter application. Then Bhavesh we had again the Bhavesh. Thank you so much. This was something state management people were like widget, state. So again, this was really helpful. So Will, thank you so much. We really wanted to say that you have got a really good beard. People are so like concerned about okay they can like they're looking up to for that. And day 3 we have again a great Flutter for all of you. We have scaling Flutter architecture by leveraging strategic domain. That is again a driven design by Mazid, and then we have Devin and Pooja up next for mastering written Flutter content. Again, documentation is something very important. If you are into tech field, if you are into programming and all, more more clear code you write, better people can easily run that, and someone can later on it's like preparing a hierarchy kind of stuff. That if you are writing well now, in future even after one day you are not a part of that project anymore, but someone can easily understand that and they can make modification accordingly. And then we will be closing the third day, the last but not the least again, by Nikita Gandhi with the closing notes. So thank you so much for spreading the word, for turning up, and for being the audience, and along with that, for being such good support, because we have witnessed that since yesterday night the team was up till quite a late, and we were keep on checking your tweets. We had great number of tweets. We were so overwhelmed with the tweets and the feedbacks that you guys showed up over there. Let me just quickly check who all are now available from the speakers panel for the town to join us for the quick Q&A. Probably they might help you to kickstart your Flutter journey if you haven't started it, or you just got excited. Oh, this is something I also want to learn, because it will save a lot of your clients' time and a lot of your efforts as well. So let me just confirm. Do we have Bhavesh now who can join us for Q&A? Yeah, I would just ask our admin who is taking care of that, turn on their cameras, or if possible, so that we can kind of get hands up. Okay, I'm there. Wonderful. Who else can join us now? I guess we have Will as well. Will you be able to part of the Q&A session for a couple of minutes? We have some interesting ones we got for you. So if you can be a part of that, we won't eat much time of yours for sure. And do we have Drumil? Okay.
So yeah, we have Sanskar Vinod Tiwari, and you may have came across Sanskar designing cool things on YouTube, on Facebook, and he's a rising star. So
Wow.
welcome, Sanskar.
Wonderful.
Thanks for yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So we have
am
got
I
a great panel now.
So
I hope we will not face any technical challenges at least for a couple of minutes, so that we can just try to hear you more and more, and we can help the crowd to get all the answers that they were looking for. Okay. We'll go straight to Sanskar and Bhavesh and Bharat. Will first we have some questions for Sanskar and Bhavesh. This is very basic. some newbies like me, including, who has never done coding before, but they just want to know that what made you to start learning Flutter?
Okay, so Flutter is like a very easy framework to learn. I started Flutter like about 6 months ago, and I was
Mm-hmm.
really completing within 10 days. And there were my colleagues that were started learning Android. They need
Mm-hmm.
around 3 months to complete. And
Right.
I
You're audible.
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. So should I like? I would just wanted to complete him to complete first.
I think that there are some technical challenges. We'll
Okay.
have
Okay.
to bear that.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
Anska. Take up.
yeah. So if we talk about myself, like I have been doing Android native with Java for quite a long now. So
Right.
I started with Android around 2017. So that's
Okay.
when I was doing with native, and I have been doing natively for that. So since I got to know about Flutter, you can say around 3, 4, like last year, you can say 4, 5, 6 something months. I was working on my client's project actually, so I was busy
Okay.
with that. I was not able to catch up with Flutter and all. But
Okay.
what happened was once I that project was done, when I started with Flutter, the question which you have is basically why I started, right? Why a particular
Mm.
person? So the thing which I always faced when I was working on Android native was that I always thought that I will not be able to build for web. I will not be able to build for iOS. I do get sometime options like you can go for React Native and you can build hybrid apps and all, but
Right.
the thought was basically if I'm building an app, I have this audience of 80% people uses Android, things like that, and I already have a grip on that, right? So rather than starting from scratch, building from both, let's just go what we are doing. The best thing or the best part about Flutter, what I personally like, was when they said that it's not just Android, iOS. They're talking about that main thing is like what their vision is, right? They said
Mm.
that they want to make it like you can create any app where there is pixels, right? That's kind of
Right.
what their vision is. So that is something which really excites me. And for me personally, what you may have seen, like major of the apps which I have made, rather than posting them on like Play Store or App Store, I have been doing web a lot. So because the thing was like I have been doing Android for more than 2 years, and I was like kind of fed up. You can say like I wanted to do web because I haven't done it anytime. And when I tried HTML and CSS, I was like I never can thought that I can build how I want things to be, right? With that,
Right.
I didn't try that much, but yeah, I never was able to think that I will be able to create pixel perfect kind of UIs which I want. But when
True
I
that.
started with Flutter, like it was really easy comparatively. Like with HTML CSS, I tried multiple times and I was not able to do it. But when I tried with Flutter, I was able to do it. So, and that really get me hooked. Like from the day I have started Flutter, I have been really addicted. So I'm not like for a quite long, like you can say for more than 4 or 5 months, I have not been building a native app as well. So yeah, that was means basically
So it
not building
turned
for
like an
that.
addiction for you, is it?
Yeah, yeah, like I'm really enjoying it because the thing which it has opened for me, like the gates, like building for web, building PWAs, it's really interesting for me, like to all explore or these, because these were things which I thought I will never be able to do if I, major people will think that you are doing native Android, you should stick with it and you can get perfect at it, right? So that was
Right.
the thought that I will never be able to build for web, I will never be able to build. So once these opportunity opened, I was like, just I have to go for it. So that's how I am.
So following to that question, how long
Yeah.
it took for you to grab the basics of Flutter? Because you said you were previously working for Android and Java were like your playthings when you were switching to
Yeah.
Flutter. So how long it took for you to grab the basics of Flutter, and so that you can directly switch on to the corporate stuff. You yourself can develop something in that.
So like it depends what we want to build. Like for the basics, like building basic UIs, or like you're talking about building a whole
The
app.
basics of Flutter, basically. To
Yeah,
know
but
the
like
basics of that, we can quickly start on that with the syntax and everything.
Yeah, so I don't think like basics takes a lot of time. If you already have some experience building with another platform like Android native, which I have, it was
Right.
really easy. As I mentioned, like I don't actually recall the exact time, like how many days it was, but yeah, it was pretty quick comparatively anyhow, because as I mentioned, I tried HTML CSS multiple times, because that's something which I wanted to, like, I have building Android, I just wanted to try web as well, but I was not able
Creative
to do
mind.
that. Yeah.
A creative
So
mind. We
when
see that.
yeah, so when I did that, it was pretty, like, for example, for anyone who have any experience, if they will try it, I cannot give exact time things, because people have different things, like you can spend 1 hour a day, some people spend 18 hours a day, like it depends on how he is working, but
Right.
if you can spend a good amount of time, it's really easy to get it with, like, it's not a very tough thing, even with the syntax you talk about, or understanding things, and the best part is the documentation and the community support which we have, right?
True,
Because
true.
a
So
lot
this
of
is
people are
immense. This is immense for Flutter community support. I
right,
see. Since last
correct.
few, like even during these 2 years only, people has commendably contributed to Flutter.
Even like it myself, like to be honest, like initially I was not able to install like Flutter when I was trying with Android Studio. I downloaded that, but I was facing some problems, it was not working. So I posted that on a Facebook group, and one person, like, I got connected and I messaged him, and he helped me through TeamViewer to set it up. So it was really like means from that on, like, I started full on.
For me,
So
that guy is Sunny. Luckily, I had him. Okay,
yeah,
thank you so much, Sanskar. This was helpful. Again, the people who could not stay up till this long, they will be they probably might be hearing you tomorrow on YouTube video. So again, they will
yeah,
get the answer. So that's the reason I wanted to stretch a bit to know the like all the key information that I can grab for them, so that for
yeah.
tomorrow the viewer would be satisfied with the answer. Thank you so much, Sanskar. This was helpful. Yeah, coming back to Bhavesh, there is one like very corporate kind of question for you.
Okay.
Let me give 1 second. Yeah. So, coming from a previous environment, how Flutter affected your productivity and overall performance?
Mm, can you simplify the question? I cannot understand that.
So,
Okay,
so you
I'll
were
update this
previously
question.
working. Go ahead.
Uh, Coming from different backgrounds, so like you said, you came from PHP and lots of technologies. How you
Okay.
find Flutter's performance better or better than some other technologies?
Okay. I was working like 6 months to 8 months on the React Native. Then I heard from one of my friend like Flutter is performing very good. So I tried Flutter for 1 week to 14 to give it a trial, like how it goes. And as I was building my app, like the app that I built in React Native, I tried to build on that, and I was comparing the performance, and I was sure that there was a good performance from the Flutter. But the core thing that bring me to Flutter like is its building speed. The speed that you get like building your app is very good. Like if you use your one widget like scaffold, use your app bar, use body, and your screen is ready. I like that concept very well. And I as I come from the reactive approach, like I to declarative approach, I found it very easy. Like in React, it's also like that. You set state, it's re-render, and in Flutter, it's also like the same. You set state, your widget is re-render. So consuming me the Flutter as I come from the React Native is more like it's very easy for me to consume it, and it gave me two positive things. Like it's first the thing the I get is the performance, and second thing I easily adopted due to the declarative approach.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. Uh, with any other platform, I was an iOS developer, and for last 1 year, I was Xamarin Forms developer, and I find Flutter quite declarative. Whatever you write is what you get. Like if you want to get text, you write text. If you want to get drawer, you write drawer, and that is easy. So
Yes, yes.
that's one of the things which got me into joining this army of Flutter developers. So Yeah.
Bharat, I have next question for you. How is Flutter going to be integrated with Fuchsia?
Okay, so
Yeah.
mostly Flutter is going to integrate it with Fuchsia. So as we see that Fuchsia is a new operating system and Flutter is also new. So when we see anything in screen, the Flutter is already UI kit, and we can just see on Fuchsia. मतलब whole UI will be made from Fuchsia, and also you will be able to make application using Flutter and many other things like it is native for Fuchsia. Flutter is native for Fuchsia.
So, for the people who may not know Bharat, so Bharat has been following the developments in the Fuchsia's repository and conversations happening, how they are planning to do and what they are planning to do with Fuchsia and what and their roadmap. So, yeah, Bharat has been following that for quite a while. So,
Okay.
And we personally recommend, like, if you're listening him now, would be great. If you're not listening, not able to listen him now, you're catching him later on as well. This guy would be there like 24/7 to answer a question on Twitter. Just catch him up and make most out of his usage as a resource.
okay,
Okay.
for
Uh,
Poonam, so for everyone, we also have a Slack channel. So I would highly encourage everyone to join it and move their discussion with anyone, because we have uh, many people from, I mean, people from all around the India, and you can take your conversations there and get expert help.
because
So
we have got a
I have a
great
very
channel.
weird question. I mean, a very controversial question. Uh, so I have been using Block, and it makes me write way too much code. So I was thinking about moving to some other state management approach. So uh, if any one of you have used Block, should I stay with Block, or should I jump to
Okay,
Mobex
so
or something
there
else?
are lots of state management frameworks we can say, just like provider, MobX, Block. So there is a one simple thing which everyone have, and it is known as set stat. So in every framework, there is a different approach to call set stat. Okay. In Block, it is very simple. You just pass one event, and there will be something happening over there, and after that, you will uh, give a state in set state. Okay, so this is a simple approach of Block, but there are lots of boilerplate involving in it. But again, things are really same on the whole app in the whole app. So when I see the same thing with provider, so we have lots of things like consumer and selectors. So there are lots of things in providers. So if you can manage a complex things, I mean complex things like too much of things, then you can go with provider. And if you want simple but with some more boilerplate, then you can go with Block. And personally, I like Block.
Yeah, thank you. So looks like I need to leave the stream, and thank you guys
Clock
for
is hitting. The clock is hitting. Yeah. We cannot
uh,
have more people stay up with us.
it's
Okay,
midnight in
we'll have a
India,
quick wrap
so
up now.
we should
We'll
get
have a
to
quick wrap
sleep.
up now. Yes, we again, entire team, and we have a Flutter India. We again thank you, everyone, all the speakers, and each individual who were as a viewer, who were there as a viewer. Super thankful to all of you because you guys made the event even bigger than we expected from us. And the speakers were they turned up and they put on some great content to deliver. It wasn't easy, we understand that, but yeah, the way you guys turned up and the way you guys were there to help everyone, to contribute, to let them know that how can they start with it. This was amazing. So we are really thankful to you. We'll be seeing you again tomorrow, stay tuned with us, and whatever questions you have, you can put it on Twitter. We'll try to catch that up, and in the meantime, yeah, stay happy, stay healthy, and yeah, thank you so much. Here we are closing. Thank you. Good night.